The stars looked different from the observation deck of the alien ship. John Barrett stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the unfamiliar constellations. 6 months ago, he had been on Earth, leading covert operations as a Navy SEAL. Now he floated through space aboard the Celestial Dawn surrounded by beings from 17 different worlds. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Alliance came without warning. Their ships appeared in Earth's orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning in 2157. The aliens didn't come with threats or demands. They came with an offer. The Alliance needed help in their war against the Draxian Empire, a conflict that had raged for over 300 years, with no end in sight. "Captain Barrett, your presence is requested on the command deck." The voice belonged to Vex, a blue-skinned Maraxian communications officer. "On my way," John replied, taking one last look at the stars before turning away. The halls of the Celestial Dawn were designed for creatures of many shapes and sizes. Some corridors were wide enough for the massive four-armed Cronins, while others featured low-gravity sections for the delicate Aryans who moved like floating jellyfish. John had learned to navigate these passages carefully, always aware that he represented all of humanity in this new frontier. Admiral Zelnar waited on the command deck. The tall, thin alien had skin that shimmered like polished silver and eyes that changed color with his mood. Today they glowed a deep purple concern. "Captain Barrett, we've received reports of Draxian movements near the Centauri outpost," Zelnar said, his voice a musical hum. "Our tactical officers have prepared the standard response formation." John studied the holographic display showing the position of Alliance and Draxian ships. The pattern was familiar. He had seen it in dozens of battle records. The Alliance always responded the same way to Draxian provocations, and the Draxians always countered with the same maneuvers. It was like watching two chess masters play the same game over and over, neither willing to try a new strategy. "With respect, Admiral, this approach hasn't worked for 3 centuries, John said. "The Draxians will expect it." Zelnar's eyes flashed orange briefly. Annoyance. "Our tactics are refined from generations of warfare, Captain. Your species has only just achieved faster-than-light travel." John stepped closer to the display. "That's exactly why I'm here, isn't it? You recruited humans because we think differently." The Admiral's skin rippled, the equivalent of a sigh. "Very well, Captain. What would you suggest?" John moved his hands through the hologram, rearranging the ship formations. "Split your forces here and here. Position your long-range vessels behind this moon." The Draxians always attack in a 3-pronged formation. They've done it in the last 57 engagements. The alien officers in the room exchanged glances. One of them, a stocky reptilian named Kresh, spoke up. "That would leave our flank exposed." "Only if they expect it," John replied. "But they won't, because you've never done it before." The room fell silent. John could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on these beings. They had been fighting the same enemy for longer than Earth had known electricity. Their cultures, their technologies, even their biologies had evolved around this endless war. Admiral Zelnar's eyes shifted to green. Contemplation. "Your suggestion will be noted, Captain Barrett, but we will proceed with the standard engagement protocol." Later, as the Alliance fleet moved into their familiar formation, John watched from a secondary command post. A young human lieutenant named Jack Miller joined him, fresh from Earth's Space Command. "They didn't listen, did they, sir?" Jack asked. John shook his head. "Change is hard, especially after 300 years of doing things one way." He pointed to the tactical display where Draxian ships were appearing exactly where he had predicted. "But they will listen eventually." "What makes you so sure?" Jack asked. John's eyes remained fixed on the display, watching as the dance of war continued its predictable steps. "Because humans don't accept stalemates, Lieutenant. We adapt. We improvise. And sooner or later, they'll need that quality more than they need their traditions." As if on cue, the first Draxian torpedoes streaked across space, and the battle began again, just as it had countless times before. But this time, there was something new in the equation, something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans had joined the war. 3 weeks passed with no change. John attended strategy meetings where the Alliance officers made the same plans they had made for hundreds of years. He offered suggestions that were politely noted and then ignored. The war continued as it always had, a slow, grinding exchange of territory that meant nothing in the grand scheme of the galaxy. John sat in the mess hall, pushing strange blue food around his plate. Jack Miller dropped into the seat across from him. "You look like someone shot your dog, Captain," Jack said. "Just wondering why they brought us out here if they won't listen to a word we say," John replied. Jack leaned forward. "Word is, not everyone feels that way. Some of the younger officers talk about your ideas when the higher-ups aren't around." Before John could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The lighting shifted to a deep red glow. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." The voice over the intercom belonged to Admiral Zelnar, but it lacked its usual calm. John and Jack ran to the command deck. The scene that greeted them was chaos. A surprise Draxian attack had caught the Alliance fleet off guard. 3 Draxian warships had appeared from behind a nearby asteroid field, a direction the Alliance had never bothered to guard. "Shields at 40%, shouted a blue-skinned officer. "Our port weapons array is offline," reported another. John watched as Admiral Zelnar tried to organize a defense, but the surprise was too complete. A massive explosion rocked the ship. John was thrown against a wall. When he got to his feet, half the command deck was in ruins. Admiral Zelnar lay motionless under a fallen beam, his silver skin now dull and lifeless. The remaining officers looked around in panic. The chain of command was clear. Sub-Commander Vrix was next in line, but the insectoid officer was nowhere to be seen. "Who has command?" someone shouted. John stepped forward. This wasn't the time for protocol. "I'm taking emergency command," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Lieutenant Miller, get me ship-wide communications." A reptilian officer named Kresh stepped forward. "You have no authority to." "Look around you, Kresh," John cut him off. "Your admiral is dead. Your sub-commander is missing. We have minutes before this ship is destroyed. Now either help me save it or get out of my way." Kresh hesitated, then stepped back. John accessed the ship's controls. "All hands, this is Captain Barrett. I'm taking emergency command. Prepare for immediate tactical maneuvers." He turned to the navigation officer, a small 6-armed being named Pix. "Plot a course directly toward the lead Draxian vessel." "Toward them," Pix squeaked. "That's suicide." "They won't expect it," John said. "No Alliance ship has ever charged a Draxian vessel head-on. Do it now." The ship lurched as Pix followed the order. The remaining officers watched in horror as the Celestial Dawn turned and accelerated toward the enemy. "Divert all power from weapons to the forward shields," John ordered, "and prepare the tractor beam." "Tractor beam?" Kresh asked. "What good will that do against a warship?" John didn't answer. The Draxian ship grew larger on the view screen. They were so close now that John could see the confused reactions of the Draxians on their own command deck. "They're not firing," Jack said in amazement. "They don't know what to make of us." "Now," John shouted. "Full stop and activate tractor beam." The Celestial Dawn shuddered as it came to a sudden halt just 100 meters from the Draxian ship. The tractor beam shot out, not aiming for the ship itself, but for the asteroid debris floating nearby. Massive rocks were pulled into the space between the ships, creating an improvised shield just as the Draxians finally opened fire. Their weapons hit the rocks, creating a cloud of dust and radiation that blinded their sensors. John seized the moment. "All power to starboard thrusters. Roll the ship and bring weapons online." The Celestial Dawn spun away from the debris cloud and fired all functioning weapons at the second Draxian vessel, catching it completely unprepared. The enemy ship's engines exploded, sending it spinning into the third Draxian warship. In less than 5 minutes, John Barrett had turned a certain defeat into the first decisive Alliance victory in decades. And he wasn't finished yet. The mood aboard the Celestial Dawn changed after the battle. Crew members who had once avoided John now nodded respectfully when he passed. His emergency command had lasted only 6 hours before Alliance protocols reasserted themselves, but in that time, he had accomplished something unprecedented. The third Draxian ship had been disabled rather than destroyed. John had ordered a boarding party led by himself and Jack to capture the vessel intact. They had secured not only the first Draxian prisoners in 50 years, but also an undamaged enemy ship for Alliance engineers to study. Now, 1 week later, John stood at attention in the Grand Hall of the Alliance flagship, Eternal Light The massive chamber was filled with high-ranking officers from all 17 species. At the center stood Admiral Kelfar, an ancient Valorian whose scaled skin had faded from the bright red of youth to a pale pink. His species was known for their long lives and even longer memories. Captain John Barrett of Earth. Kelfar's voice was deep and resonant despite his age. Your actions aboard the Celestial Dawn have been unusual. An uncomfortable silence filled the hall. John maintained his composure, though he suspected this meeting would end with his court-martial for breaking chain of command. The Alliance has fought the Draxians for 312 years, Kelfar continued. In that time, we have developed protocols based on centuries of experience. These protocols exist for a reason. John noticed several officers nodding in agreement. However, the Admiral's voice shifted. In all those centuries, we have never captured a Draxian vessel intact. We have never taken high-ranking prisoners. We have never achieved what you accomplished in 6 hours of command. The hall grew even quieter. The information gained from the captured ship has already led to significant breakthroughs in our understanding of Draxian technology, Kelfar said. And the prisoners have provided more intelligence than we have gathered in the last 50 years. The old Admiral stepped closer to John. I have read your report. Your tactics were, what is the human term? Improvised. You acted without proper planning, without consulting historical battle records, without following any established protocol. Yes, Admiral, John replied simply. And therein lies the value, Kelfar said, surprising everyone. For 3 centuries, we have fought this war using the same methods, and for 3 centuries, we have achieved the same results. A stalemate written in the blood of countless beings. Kelfar turned to address the assembled officers. I have lost 2 mates and 5 children to this war. Many of you have similar stories. We continue to fight because we must, but we have forgotten how to win. The Admiral's gaze returned to John. Humanity is young, untested, undisciplined by our standards, but perhaps that is exactly what this war needs. A murmur spread through the hall. John could see the shock on many alien faces. I am hereby appointing Captain John Barrett as the permanent commander of the Celestial Dawn Kelfar announced. The first human to command an Alliance warship. The murmur grew louder. A tall, elegant officer with purple skin stepped forward. Admiral, with all respect, Lieutenant Zaraval was next in the command chain after Subcommander Vrix. By protocol. Protocol has kept us in this war for 3 centuries. Commander Lorne, Kelfar cut him off. I am making this decision not based on protocol, but on results. Lieutenant Zaraval herself stood nearby, her face unreadable, but her body rigid with tension. John had met her only briefly during the cleanup after the battle. She had been efficient and professional, but distant. As the meeting concluded, John found himself surrounded by a mix of curious and suspicious officers. Some offered congratulations while others simply studied him as if he were a puzzle they couldn't solve. Jack approached with a grin. Commander Barrett now, is it? Not bad for your first month in space. This won't be easy, John replied quietly. Half the crew will resent having a human in command. True, Jack agreed. But after what you did, they can't deny you've earned a chance. John nodded, watching as Lieutenant Zoraval left the hall without looking in his direction. His real challenge was just beginning. John's first day as commander of the Celestial Dawn began with a problem. He arrived on the bridge to find several officers standing in rigid silence. At the center of the tension was Lieutenant Zoraval, now his second in command. Lieutenant, report, John said as he took the command chair. Zoraval's voice was cool and professional. Chief Engineer Drav refuses to implement the weapon modifications you ordered. He claims they violate Alliance safety protocols. John nodded. Where is Drav now? In engineering, Commander. He said, and I quote, if the human wants to blow us all up, he can come tell me himself. Several officers looked down to hide their expressions. John stood up. Lieutenant, you have the bridge. I'm going to engineering. The engineering deck was a maze of pipes, cables, and glowing power conduits. In the center stood Drav, a stocky, gray-skinned Volan with 4 eyes and 6-fingered hands that moved with incredible precision. Chief Engineer, John called out. Drav looked up from his workstation. Commander, the words sounded like a challenge. I understand you have concerns about my modifications. Concerns? Drav grunted. Your changes would reroute power through systems never designed to handle such loads. It violates 15 different Alliance protocols. John stepped closer. And yet it would increase our weapons' effectiveness by 30%. Until the systems fail and we all die, Drav countered. John looked around the engineering bay. Other crew members pretended to work while listening closely. Tell me, Chief, how long have you served on Alliance ships? Drav's upper eyes narrowed. 22 years. And in those 22 years, how many battles have you won? Real victories, not tactical retreats called strategic realignments. The engineer fell silent. That's what I thought, John said quietly. The Draxians know every move the Alliance will make before you make it. They know exactly what your ships can do because you've been doing the same things for centuries. John picked up a tool from a nearby table. My species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Do you know what that means? Drav shook his head. It means when your back is against the wall, you find new solutions or you die. Humanity faced extinction many times in our history. We survived because we adapted. John handed the tool to Drav. I'm not asking you to follow protocols. I'm asking you to help me save lives by doing something the enemy won't expect. Drav stared at the tool in his hand. My people are engineers and scientists. We value logic and safety. And how has that worked in this war so far? A long moment passed. Finally, Drav sighed. What exactly did you have in mind, Commander? 2 hours later, John returned to the bridge. Lieutenant Zoraval approached him immediately. What did you say to Drav? He just requested additional power couplings and told his team to prepare for a human upgrade. John smiled slightly. We found common ground. Over the next week, John met with each department head. He asked questions no Alliance officer had ever asked. What skills did each crew member have beyond their assigned roles? What ideas had they never shared because of protocols? What did they know about their enemies that wasn't in the official records? Slowly, resistance gave way to curiosity. When John asked the area navigation officer, Mira, to plot courses that violated standard patterns, she surprised him with 3 alternatives that were better than what he had imagined. The weapons officer, Krell, a massive 4-armed Cronin, showed John fighting techniques his species used in personal combat that could be adapted to ship maneuvers. Even Zoraval began to thaw slightly when John asked for her input, rather than simply giving orders. By the end of his second week in command, the Celestial Dawn was no longer just an Alliance vessel following protocols. It was becoming something new, a ship where each crew member's unique abilities were valued. And John Barrett was no longer just a human commander trying to fit in. He was becoming a leader whose crew might follow him into the unknown. 1 month after John took command, the Celestial Dawn received urgent orders. A major Draxian fleet was advancing toward Velora, an important Alliance colony. All available ships were ordered to fall back and protect the main Alliance bases. John called his officers to the command deck. Zeraval, Drav, and the others gathered around the holographic display showing the Draxian advance. Alliance Command wants us to retreat to Sector 7, John said, pointing to a position far from the colony. Standard protocol, Zoraval noted. Protect our main force while sacrificing the colony. The colony has 3 million civilians, said Mira, the navigation officer. Her delicate Aryan features showed clear distress. John studied the display. What if we don't retreat? The room fell silent. Commander, Zoraval said carefully, the orders are clear. Yes, they are, John agreed, but they're also wrong. He zoomed in on the space near Velora. The Draxians expect all Alliance ships to follow protocol and retreat. They'll be prepared for that. What they won't expect is this. John's fingers traced a path through a dense asteroid field between their position and the colony. That's the Scarlet Belt, Drav said. No ship has successfully navigated it at combat speed. No Alliance ship, John corrected, because Alliance protocols label it as impassable. He turned to Mira. Can you plot us a course through it? The Aryan's wings fluttered nervously. Theoretically, yes, but it would require split-second course corrections. One mistake and... I trust your skills, John interrupted. And I've seen what the modified engines can do. Drav crossed his arms. The modifications weren't designed for this kind of precision flying. Then we'll modify them again, John said simply. He looked at each officer in turn. I understand this goes against everything you've been taught. If anyone objects, speak now. No one spoke for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, Lieutenant Zoraval stepped forward. Commander, if we succeed, we could save the colony, she said. But if we fail, we'll have disobeyed direct orders and potentially lost a valuable Alliance vessel. True, John acknowledged. Then I suggest we ensure we don't fail, she said, her voice firmer than he had ever heard it. I'll begin planning defensive maneuvers for when we exit the asteroid field. One by one, the other officers offered their support. Even Drav grudgingly admitted he had some ideas for improving the engine response time. As the meeting ended, a new officer entered the command deck. He was human, with dark skin and sharp eyes. Commander Barrett, I'm Lieutenant Sam Matthews, Alliance Intelligence. I was transferred to your ship yesterday. John welcomed him. Good timing, Lieutenant. We're about to attempt something that hasn't been done before. Sam looked at the star map. You're going through the Scarlet Belt to protect Velora. Against orders. A slow smile spread across his face. That's exactly why I requested this assignment, sir. 2 days later, the Celestial Dawn approached the edge of the Scarlet Belt. Red dust from the asteroids gave the region its name and made visual navigation nearly impossible. All hands, secure for high-speed maneuvers, John announced shipwide. Mira, take us in. The ship plunged into the swirling crimson chaos. On the bridge, Mira's hands danced across her controls with incredible speed. Drav's voice came over the comm from engineering, constantly adjusting power levels as they wove through the deadly field. Twice they came within meters of collision. Once, a small asteroid scraped along their hull, making the entire ship shudder. But Mira's navigation was flawless, and Drav's engines responded perfectly to every demand. After 3 tense hours, they emerged on the other side, directly behind the Draxian fleet approaching Velora. They don't see us, Sam confirmed, monitoring the enemy communications. They have no idea we're here. John looked at his crew, seeing the same determination in alien eyes that he felt himself. Weapons at full power, he ordered. Let's show the Draxians what happens when they threaten civilians under our protection. The Celestial Dawn moved forward, about to change the course of the war forever. The Celestial Dawn struck without warning. 3 Draxian ships exploded before they even knew they were under attack. The rest of the fleet scattered in confusion, their perfect formation broken. They're trying to regroup, Zoraval reported, watching the enemy movements on the tactical display. John nodded. They're following their standard response to a surprise attack. Lieutenant Matthews, now would be a good time for that information you mentioned. Sam stepped forward. The intelligence officer had spent the journey through the asteroid field, analyzing the data from the captured Draxian ship. The Draxians operate with a hive mind structure, Sam explained quickly. Their ships are controlled by subminds connected to the fleet commander. If we can identify and target the command vessel, we can disrupt their entire force. How do we identify it? John asked. Sam pointed to a ship near the center of the Draxian formation. Their communications pattern. All orders flow from that vessel. It won't look different from the others, but it's their brain. John turned to his weapons officer. Krell, target that ship. Don't destroy it. Disable its engines and communications array. The massive 4-armed Cronin grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. With pleasure, Commander. The Celestial Dawn's modified weapons fired with pinpoint accuracy. The Draxian command ship's engines flared and died, its communications array shattered. The effect was immediate and stunning. The Draxian fleet fell into chaos. Some ships fired randomly, others tried to flee, and a few simply drifted, as if waiting for orders that would never come. It worked, Zoraval said, her voice filled with wonder. They're completely disorganized. John opened a channel to the Alliance fleet waiting at the fallback position. This is Commander Barrett of the Celestial Dawn *. We have engaged the Draxian fleet at Valora and disrupted their command structure. Request immediate support to complete the victory. There was a pause before Admiral Kelfar's voice responded. Commander Barrett, I see you've ignored direct orders again. Yes, Admiral. I take full responsibility. Another pause. And saved 3 million lives in the process. The fleet is moving to your position. Well done, Commander. The battle that followed was unlike any in the long history of the war. With their command structure broken, the Draxians couldn't coordinate their defense. The Alliance ships, inspired by the Celestial Dawn's success, abandoned their rigid battle formations and attacked with newfound creativity. When it was over, not a single Draxian ship escaped. It was the most complete victory the Alliance had ever achieved. In the aftermath, John found Sam Matthews studying the captured data from the Draxian command ship. Something interesting? John asked. Sam looked up, his eyes bright with excitement. Commander, I think I found a critical weakness in the entire Draxian Empire. Their hive mind doesn't just control their fleets, it's the foundation of their entire society. He showed John a complex diagram. Each sector of Draxian space is controlled by a primary hive node. These nodes are connected to the hive mind queen at their homeworld. If we could disrupt enough of these nodes simultaneously, we could end the war. John finished the thought. Exactly. But it would require a coordinated attack unlike anything the Alliance has ever attempted. Multiple strike forces hitting different targets at precisely the same time. Complete radio silence until the moment of attack. No central command to intercept. John considered this. The Alliance High Command would never approve such a plan. It goes against centuries of their doctrine. Then we need to show them proof that it will work, Sam said. Later that day, Admiral Kelfar arrived on the Celestial Dawn *. The old Valorian moved slowly through the ship, stopping to speak with crew members from each species. When he finally reached the command deck, he found John waiting. You've created something remarkable here, Commander, the Admiral said. A ship where protocols take second place to results. John stood straight. Admiral, I have a proposal that could end this war within one Earth year. Kelfar's ancient eyes studied John carefully. I'm listening, Commander Barrett. Tell me how humanity plans to accomplish what 17 species have failed to do for 3 centuries. John nodded to Sam, who stepped forward with their plan. The future of the galaxy was about to change forever. 1 Earth year later, John Barrett stood on the bridge of the Celestial Dawn watching the stars. So much had changed in that time. After the victory at Valora, Admiral Kelfar had given John command of a small fleet to test his theories. The results had been beyond anyone's expectations. 5 major Draxian strongholds had fallen. 17 Alliance worlds had been freed from occupation. And now, the moment of truth had arrived. All ships report ready, Commander, Zaraval said. Over the past year, she had become John's most trusted officer and friend. John nodded. Send the signal. Operation Sunrise begins now. Across 20 sectors of space, over 200 Alliance ships moved simultaneously toward their targets. Each fleet was led by a commander who had trained under John's guidance. Each followed the same principle: unpredictable tactics targeting the Draxian hive mind structure. The Celestial Dawn led the primary assault force, 12 ships heading directly for the Draxian homeworld. They faced the strongest defenses in the Empire, but they also had the element of surprise. No enemy in 300 years had dared to attack the heart of Draxian power. Enemy ships detected, Mira reported from her navigation station. Standard defensive formation. They still haven't learned, Drav commented from engineering. The once skeptical Volan had become one of John's strongest supporters. His engineering genius had helped spread John's modifications throughout the Alliance fleet. Maintain course, John ordered. Lieutenant Matthews, begin the transmission. Sam activated a special communications array they had developed over the past year. It broadcast directly on the frequencies used by the Draxian hive mind. Transmission active. The signal is disrupting their coordination, Sam reported. The Draxian ships began to move erratically. Some fired at empty space. Others simply stopped moving altogether. It's working, Zoraval said, her voice filled with awe. The Alliance fleet pushed forward, meeting only scattered resistance. Within hours, they had reached the orbit of the Draxian homeworld. We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, Sam announced, surprised. It's the hive mind queen herself. On screen, John ordered. The view screen showed a large chamber where a massive insect-like creature sat surrounded by smaller attendants. Despite her alien appearance, her eyes held unmistakable intelligence. Human commander. The Queen's voice was translated by the ship's computer. We request peace. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. 312 years of war. And now you want peace? John asked. For 300 years, we fought because that was our way. The Queen replied. No species ever challenged our methods until humans arrived. You showed the Alliance how to think differently. Now you show us our own weakness. Why should we trust you? John asked. Because we have no choice, the Queen answered simply. Your attack has shown us that war is no longer a viable path. Adaptation is necessary for survival. We have learned this from observing humans. 3 days later, representatives from all Alliance species gathered in the Great Hall of the Eternal Light to witness history. The Draxian Queen herself came aboard to sign the peace treaty with Admiral Kelfar. John stood to one side, watching as centuries of hatred and war came to an official end. Beside him, his crew, Zoraval, Drav, Mira, Krill, and Sam, watched with the same sense of wonder. I still can't believe it's really over, Sam said quietly. It almost doesn't feel real, Zoraval agreed. Admiral Kelfar approached them after the ceremony. The ancient Valorian looked younger somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted from him. Commander Barrett, he said formally, the Alliance Council has created a new position. Supreme Commander of the United Galactic Fleet. They have asked me to offer this role to you. John was speechless. Your human approach to warfare saved us all, Kelfar continued. Now we need that same approach to build a lasting peace. Drav nudged John. Say yes, human. Someone needs to keep the Alliance from falling back into old habits. I would be honored, Admiral, John finally replied. Later, as the celebration continued around them, John stood with his crew at a viewport, looking out at the stars. What will you call it? Zaraval asked. Your approach to leadership that ended 3 centuries of war. John smiled. On Earth, we have a simple name for it. We call it thinking outside the box. His alien crew looked confused. I'll explain it someday, John said with a laugh. We have plenty of time now. And for the first time in 312 years, the galaxy was at peace.